Christianity didn't just pop out of a vacuum, but it sprang from a very highly developed religious tradition and culture of ancient Israel known as Judaism. It's all too easy for us as Gentiles to forget this really important fact that the Apostle Paul warns non Jews to be careful of our arrogance against Jewish people. This is the New Testament. And of course, that is exactly what has taken place. We were supposed to provoke the Jews to jealousy, yet we provoke them, but not always to jealousy. Jesus' Jewishness would probably shock most Christians in a sense that we know from Scripture that a woman once touched the hem of his garment. We know that, but when you read the actual words, it's the tzitzit of his garment, the fringes of his garment, the tassels of his garment. In Luke 8:44, you read that Jesus actually wore the garments of Jewish tradition, which Orthodox Jews still wear to this day, fulfilling the commands of the law, Deuteronomy 22:12. And it was somewhat surprising to me that it literally says that she reached out and touched kraspadon, the tassels. Jesus wore tassels. Jesus was a Jew and is a Jew. And according to the book of Revelation, he still carries that great Jewish title, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He's Jewish. He ain't going to convert to Christianity. That just doesn't even really make sense, does it? Sounds a little silly. Well, the earliest church was a Jewish church headquartered in Jewish capital Jerusalem and was presided over by a Jewish leader named Yaakov, not James. I remember the first time that I heard that in Israel. I was sitting in a meeting with my friends, of course, with Marty as well, our Jewish spiritual advisor, and the pastor said, "Turn to the book of Yaakov," and I was like, "There's no book of Jacob in the Bible. What is he talking about?" Marty leans down and he says, "There was no James. It's a Jewish name, is Yaakov." It was like my head went tilt and my paradigm shifted right there in my chair. It was from this Jewish Hebrew perspective that the church began to grow, and for about a decade it was all Jewish, and then they started to reach out and gather in Gentiles, and they worked it out that this is a good thing, this is a God thing. God had always loved the nations from Genesis 12, where he said to Abraham, he blessed the nations through this Jewish new nation. And it was always on his heart, and that Gentiles would be able to now receive the Jewish scriptures, sing the Jewish psalms, pray and praise the Jewish Messiah. As Paul went out with the gospel message, he was careful to stress that the message come from Jerusalem, from Israel, and that salvation was indeed of the Jews. So he encouraged Gentiles to bless the Jewish people by collecting offerings for the needy in Jerusalem. He referred difficult decisions to the Jewish council in Jerusalem. The elders there, Acts 15:2, his gospel journeys always began and ended in Jerusalem. He showed that though he was a follower of Yeshua HaMashiach, the Jesus the Christ, he actually still honored the Sabbath. He went to the synagogue. He kept the Jewish feasts. He even made offerings in the temple. What? Read about it in Acts through 20 to 24. It's all the Jewishness of Paul is really evident. The Apostle Paul never stopped being Jewish, even shaving his head at one point to break a vow. The Apostle also did something else as he ministered among the Gentiles. He stressed the importance of keeping the right attitude toward Israel, toward the Jews, and that was one of humility and thanksgiving, even sharing material gifts with them. In Romans talks about this in 15:27, which was really actually revolutionary for our church, because we recognized that it was our place in the New Testament to bless Israel today. Again, Romans 15:27. And that really helped us in a practical way. It's a really wonderful idea. But unfortunately, in time, Paul's exhortations to not be arrogant began to kind of go unheeded. He told the Ephesian Gentiles to remember that they were once very far away, and now God had brought them close. He talked about being grafted in to those promises to the Romans. But there was this other kind of doctrine that arose called triumphalism, which was about that we take over, that we the Gentiles take over the whole Jewish thing and actually replace the Jews, and that is called replacement theology today in various degrees. But it's not good, because what it proclaims is that God has washed his hands of the Jewish people, that he's done with them, he doesn't want anything to do with them anymore. And so Christianity has replaced Judaism rather than completed Judaism. And the theology is that all scripture that applies to Israel applies to the church, which is, there's truth in that. But it's when God says, Jerusalem, he means Jerusalem. When he says Israel, he means Israel. And he's not a God that breaks his promise. So what happens is we are grafted in. What that other doctrine says, that we just totally replace them. And the problem with that is that the theology doesn't even read right in the scriptures. If you look at Romans 9-11 and you just take out the Israel and put in the church, it doesn't even make sense. It actually is just sort of like silly. You quickly see how this theology fades down. Of course, that also resulted in almost immediate persecution of the Jewish people and the Jewish church. This has been persisted through most of 2020, most of 2,000 years, and really contributed to the Holocaust even. It's surprising for most Christians to learn that what Hitler did was actually only put into practice what the church in Europe was believing and had taught for centuries. That's the sad thing about, trips to Israel. You often see many pastors and congregations there that are happily visiting Israel, seeing where Jesus walked, but they have no interest whatsoever in the renewal of the Jewish people that is taking place, that the Messianic Jews following him. Like in 1948, when Israel became, back to its homeland, there were only a handful of Jewish believers there. And now there's upwards of 20,000, because God is on the move and he's giving a real, actually, revival to the Jewish people within the land, which is all part of prophecy in the Bible. And it also says, Jesus said, when you see this begin to take place, take courage, your redemption draws nigh. This is an incredible promise that is taking place. The time of the Gentiles is coming to an end. It's coming to the time of the one new man is taking place now. And wow, it's pretty exciting. It's time that we as a church really put aside our arrogance and our humility and understand what it means to be that wild branch grafted in by God to receive from Israel those everlasting covenants, promises, and hopes, that we have been made near, as Ephesians says, lest we be broken off for our arrogance and our boasting. The key is to acknowledge that, like I said, when God says Israel, he means Israel. When he says Jerusalem, he means Jerusalem. He means it. And as Gentiles, we get in on all the promises, and that's the joy. So we honor our elder brother Israel. We bless them in our attitude. We worship God with them together. We don't have to become them. They don't have to become us. And we are one new man together. Let us honor our roots and show love and mercy to God's natural branches. That's what we're to do. Think on that. SELAH.